Hey guys, this is GamerCat. Welcome to another Pokemon Trading Card Game History video. This time, it's Gen 5 time. We're starting in the black and white set, and man, I'm too excited for a set that's not actually that good, unfortunately. There's a fair few good cards in here, and there are some things that people will point to as, this broke the game, it's so bad for it. And yeah, you're probably right, but there's just not a lot in here that I get that excited about. So, yeah. One thing to note, I like the layout of the expanded sets and whatnot here. Everything from here on out, instead of being by rarity first, is by type and then by dex number. So, that's cool. I like the sort here. It's probably going to be maybe a bit more annoying to actually talk about everything from here. Because now I'm actually going to have to look and, find the exact cards as we go through. Because they're no longer... the holos are usually the good stuff, right? But that's okay, because what I might end up doing later on, when the sets get much bigger than this is still only 115 cards. But when the sets start getting bigger, I'm probably going to have to start, moving down to here what cards are actually good. You didn't come here to talk about that, though. We are talking about the actual set itself. And, let's just go in top to bottom order here, I suppose. We'll start with the promos though, because there aren't that many of them. It's most promos are reprints of cards, but occasionally we get some new stuff, especially at the start of the generation. We have a Snivy here, a Paralyzing Gaze. Bubble on Froakie in Greninja decks was actually super big, and this does it for a colorless, so that could come up at this point. Status condition stuff might not be as strong as it used to be, but paralysis is still broken, so there is that. Tepig unfortunately doesn't do anything too special here. The other Tepig, because you tend to play it in fire decks, does actually do it better. Oshawott I've seen played because Sleep Pulse is usable on a colorless, and also, once again, even though it's far weaker than Paralyzing Gaze, status condition stuff can sometimes buy you a turn, and that is all you potentially need. The elephant in the room for promos is Tropical Beach, and this was huge. This actually was legal for the tournament, not that many people knew that, and Ross Cawthorn took it into the tournament. As a singleton copy, he could have probably done with more, but this will see play in basically a bunch of Stage 2 decks when we go to Black and White on. Blastoise in particular is huge with this thing. Once during each player's turn, that player may draw until they have 7 cards in their hand. If they do, their turn ends. That is a crazy stadium card, and right now we don't have good stadiums to bounce it with. Burn Tower is literally the best of a stadium that we have. There's only about 4. So, yeah, this card potentially could see play. Pepper's been talking about it quite a lot. I've been trying to temper expectations on it, because I have a feeling it's not going to be as good as he hopes it is, but it's really nice if you don't have anything else you want to do that turn, and you happen to be able to play a bunch of the stuff out of your hand. I don't think we're quite there yet. We don't have that many crazy things that we can do, but yeah, give it time when our decks are 30% items and whatnot, and then maybe we can talk. Alright, let's just go over the stuff in order. We have a Superior at the top here, like I said, and then, like I've said before, the stuff that we have for typing is a bit cool at this point. We can just talk about it as the grass types in the set go and everything. So yeah, the regular Superior, the non-holo one, does Leaf Storm for 2 grass, doing 60, heal 20 from each of your grass Pokemon. This was on Torterra at the start of the last generation, and it cost 2 grass and 2 colorless, and it did this much damage. Granted, Torterra had 10 more HP, but it also had 4 retreat or something. This guy retreats for free. Power creep, I tell you, right? And the funny thing is, this is not good. Torterra was actually decent at the time. This really isn't. It's just bad, and that's a shame. The actual good Superior, though, is the Royal Heal one here. As often as any time between turns, heal 10 from each of your Pokemon. This is Nidoqueen, but note the lack of a once per turn, or once between turns on this here. If you have multiple Superior out, you get Royal Heal multiple times. this starts making it really difficult to KO your guys. And so if you just get like 2 Superior out, healing 20 from each of your guys between turns, spread decks are in shambles. There's no way they can beat this. So, not that there's many of those at the moment, but it is paired with Tyranitar Prime, so be very funny in the mirror match. You have to start using Power Claw, imagine that. Leaf Tornado is an interesting attack. It doesn't do a lot of damage, but Grass Colorless to do 60, and then you move as many Grass Energy around as you want. So it's got Meganium's Energy Trance just as part of its attack. This kind of attack actually does see play at times, but a dedicated Superior deck is not going to do super well because it's just not strong enough, right? It doesn't do that much damage, and yeah, like 60 isn't even 2-shot numbers on everything at this point. It's just not quite there, but Superior Reuniclus is actually something that you might see at some point. The cards do kind of write themselves, right? So yeah, we'll get to Reuniclus as we go. The rest of the grass types, unfortunately, are complete garbage. There's not even anything interesting to talk about here. I guess the Maractus is kind of funny. When we get Victini later, we could reflip for this, but Fury Cutter style attacks are just bad, right? So whatever. Dealing's at least cute, so there is that. Swordsbuck could have been interesting if grass was a more prominent type in the format, which it, let's face it, it never is. 20 plus 10 for every grass energy attached to both you and your opponent's Pokemon. This in theory could be cool, but it just isn't there, right? You've only got 20 base, and the opponent's not going to be playing grass energy. If they play rainbows and stuff like that, then it does count, but that is so unlikely. And even if they do, you know, it's just weird. Grass doesn't have acceleration, so how are you getting this charged up? It's terrible. Anyway, I want to note this Tepe because kind of like the promo one, it's a 60 HP one that's got a 1 retreat cost, so you can actually play that down. But if you want 70 HP, which later on in the format you might well want, if you play Emboar later with Night Spears and Hammerheads and stuff in the format, then you probably want the 70 HP one because it survives 2 hits of those. We don't have that right now, and it's got 2 retreat, and it still dies to Yarn Mega, so it's probably not worth it. The 2 Emboars, the non-hollow one, this is an interesting card, to be honest with you, because it hits one-shot numbers on everything. 150 HP, by the way. This is what Meganium Prime had, but this is not a Prime because we're past that point now. Yeah, this guy takes a lot of damage and deals out the same amount of damage. 2 fire and 2 colorless to do 150, discard all the fire energy on this Pokemon. Heat Crash, I guess, is just a vanilla 50 for a weak amount, you know, like, it's a very weak attack for the energy, but sometimes you might need to finish off something with that, so don't discount it entirely. But Flare Blitz, double colorless and 2 fire, discard all the fire, discard 2 energy, do 150. It's a very, very large Charizard from the base set, except this one actually has support, because we have this Emboar. In line as well, so we don't have to play a separate stage 2, always nice. Inferno Fandango is literally Rain Dance, but better. As often as you like during your turn, you may attach your fire energy to your hand, from your hand to one of your Pokemon. It does not say one of your fire Pokemon, so you can use this to accelerate to, say, Rayquaza and Deoxys Legend, which kind of competes with this role, to be honest, but it gives up 2 prizes and dies to a Bouffalon that we'll see later, so I don't know, take it as you will. But yeah, it does one-shot numbers, and you can discard the same amount of energy, and it's just neat, right? Like 150 beats everything, pretty much. There's only a couple of things that can survive that, and just play like a single plus power, and you'll kill those as well. So yeah, and secondary attacker for the deck could be really solid. The Inferno Fandango Emboar does have 80 as its attack cost, you know, like 2 fire, 2 colors do 80. That can come up, but it's very underpowered, so you're probably last resort attacking with this thing, but if it comes up, you know, so be it, right? Maybe some reversals, you could KO some basic Pokemon with this. That's about as far as it goes. I want to kind of know, I guess, as much as this thing is grotesque anyway, the monkeys themselves do have like Fury Swipes to do 40 for the amount of heads you flip out of 3. They do it for triple colorless, so technically you could play these as like a tech attacker types in decks, but they're just really bad. So I would say just don't, but you could if you really need that attack type and you're comfortable flipping coins. I'm not, so whatever. Reshiram! The Tower Dragons are what people touted as breaking the game, because 130 HP on a basic shouldn't happen at this era, but like you see what the previous gen was like, and especially Heart Gold Soul Silver, how the basics were just like completely useless, right? The best that we had, I think, was maybe Survivor, which was like a 90 HP Pokemon that if you poisoned it, could do 90 to 80 to the opponent for 2 energy. There's no comparison. It's mostly Legendaries though, because we see Maratus as the same sort of bit here, right? Maratus is still terrible, but Legendaries, oh boy, did they get some treatment in Gen 5, and, you know, beyond. Reshiram does Outrage for double colorless energy, 20 plus 10 for every damage count that's on this Pokemon. Take notes, Rayquaza. I remember this in Gen 3, you had to flip a coin to do this, and I'm pretty sure that was a much more expensive attack too. So yeah, take notes, you have been outed. This is just the way that it is now. The real meat of this card is actually Blue Flare, to be honest, because we have this and Typhlosion as like acceleration options, like Typh and Emboar. 2 fire and a colorless, 120 damage, discard 2 fire from this Pokemon. So Typhlosion obviously works well because you just accelerate the energy from the discard back to this thing. Emboar works well with Fisherman and Energy Retrieval that we'll see at the end of this. That lets you just get the energy back to hand, then just Fandango it back down, go for more. Yeah, this guy usually takes 1 hit from just about everything, and then Outrage just murders your face if you've done too much damage to it. You've got to be very, very careful with how much you deal to these guys. And, of course, they fight each other in very awkward ways too. He who outrages first loses. It's very silly. The Samurot's over here. This attack is going to come back in the future in this format and as a 1 fighting energy on a land or a CX, but we'll get to there. Pike for 2 colors, so DC compatible. 30 plus 30 to one of the opponent's bench. So that's kind of neat. 140 HP is passable on this as well, and its Surf Attack is okay, right? I wish it was water double colorless because it would synergize better with Pike. And that's kind of where this falls off, because if you want to just do basic damage, the other one, the hollow one, is much better. This is still the worst of the 3 starters in my opinion, but it has its unique use as an anti-fire card in fire decks, which is pretty fun. So 140 HP, also has shell armor though, so it's got the same ability as Donphan. Any damage done to this Pokemon is reduced by 20. So, effectively, 160 HP, that's pretty solid, even survives the Emboar without a damage mod. And Hydro Pump for 3 colors energy does 70, plus 10 for every water that's on this Pokemon. That modifier is garbage, but you don't generally need to play this in water. You can, like for Alligator decks can play this, it'll be fine. But you play this for the 70, because 70 times 2 is enough to KO just about every fire type, right? It KOs the Reshiram in 1 hit, KOs Typhlosion in 1 hit, it almost KOs Emboar. You need a damage mod for that, but plus power is in format, so yeah, that's perfectly fine. None of the waters are any good, unfortunately. At least Swanna's artwork is kind of nice, but Swanna never gets a good card either. There's no good electrics until we get to the Zekrom, but I do kind of want to note Zebstrika is going to get a good card at some point. I say good, it's going to get a playable card at some point. But really the problem is just that energy cost, right? 3 lightning energy? Lightning has a really hard time accelerating right now. There's Pachirisu, which if you play it with Shaman is a thing, but that is not particularly useful here. So yeah, lightning doesn't have a good accelerant yet, so that kind of cost is just too expensive. And by the time it does, this is not the card you play with it. Sadly, Galvantula never gets a good card either. It gets a dual type one at one point, which sees play in Rainbow Road as the deck. I love that it was called that too, but we'll get to that way later in the game. Zekrom is the main thing to talk about here. Just like Reshiram, 130 HP, 2 retreat cost I didn't mention actually, but both of them are 2 retreat. They both have the outrage attack, and so it does exactly the same thing, but as a lightning type here. And then its key attack is Bolt Strike. For 2 lightning and a colorless, you do 120 damage still, but this Pokemon does 40 to itself. The problem is, plus power increases that damage as well. So if you go for a plus power to increase the damage to KO a Reshiram or an enemy Zekrom, you're going to do 50 to yourself. And the problem, like, that does fuel outrage, so sometimes that's going to be really good. But the problem ends up being that you're just so much easier to KO at that point. And yeah, that just kills it. However, also being weak to Donphan is kind of bad, but it is good against Yanmega, and Yanmega is pretty big going forward, so there are pluses and minuses for everything here. Most of the Psychic type stuff, there's very little of it to be honest, but most of it isn't very good. Swoobat does get some very funny attack names in the future, but it never gets a good card unfortunately. Scolipede is kind of the same, never gets a good card. You might see Banjo's Crossed one attempted though, because it is pretty interesting. But what we do have is the parallel to Alakazam, which, yeah, makes sense. Base set Alakazam getting a reprint, effectively. Just not as Alakazam, because we are still under the lawsuit stuff, basically. I had to think for a sec there. Yeah, it's being lifted nowadays, but we don't have much going for it. Solosis, 30 HP, really bad. Duozen, 60 HP, recover, same as Kadabra, really bad. Arguably, I'd say the Abra was better. Like, Cell Culture is kind of fine, right? Search it out for another Solosis, but I think the Paralysis flip was actually better. Anyway, Duozen, still bad. Reuniclus, Damage Swap. Oh yeah, this is why it's Alakazam. So this is effectively just the base set Alakazam line reprinted. Damage Swap is the last time we see this ability being this universal. So often as you like during your turn before you attack, you may move one damage counter from one of your Pokemon to another of your Pokemon. Yeah, this is ridiculous. Pair this with the Superior and you can spread damage to heal all the time in between turns. That's really cool. And also you can just move everything to one or to Geyserite Energy, and Blissey Prime is what Ross did. So yeah, Blissey Prime can full heal everything, but it also removes all the energy off of them. This just kind of gets around that. Its attack is terrible, we're never going to see it played, but the ability is so strong, and there's no ability lock for several sets, so there's a chance for it. Just Reversal and then Gust of Wind is, I say Gust of Wind is Catcher, but different, same thing. It's going to be really hard for it. It's also really, really frail. Just in case you didn't notice, this is a 90 HP stage 2. This is Jumpluff, but on something that can't attack. So yeah. Fighting types get 0 love in this set whatsoever. Throw is probably the best one, because 2 fighting and colorless does 80 and not affected by resistance. I mean, it's got such a high retreat cost as well though, and also just Donphan exists, so why would we play this? Same sort of thing with Crocodile. Like, Torment is a pretty cool effect, but it's just not strong enough for what it does. And Crocoroll, yeah, no, 100 damage of 4 energy on the stage 2 in a type that doesn't accelerate. If we want to do that, we're going to play Machamp Prime, who is just better, right? Machamp Prime's got a better first attack, it's got fighting tag. Yeah, we just don't need this. Dark types also get very little love here. We get no good Liepard's ever. Even the trade one didn't end up being good in Gen 8, so rip. 100 HP is a curse there. No good Scrafties ever, but we do get two good things. So I kind of lied, because Zoroark gets so much love in the TCG. So many of its cards are absolutely insane, and here's the first one. So Nasty Plot, not necessarily going to see. 100 HP, by the way, is good and bad. Like, it's good at the moment, it's bad when we get Level Ball, but, whatever. Yeah, Nasty Plot's pretty good if you can use it, but most decks will just play double colorless for this thing. Search your deck for any card, that's a solid attack. Even on an evolution, that's still not the worst. Foul play is what we're here for though. Double colorless energy, choose one of the defending Pokemon's attacks and use it as this attack. It's Metronome, but now for a DCE. That's crazy, to be honest. This is really good against the fire stuff in particular, because it lets you blue flare them for 120, and you don't have to discard if you don't have fire energy. So yeah, really insane against them, but it's not just for that. You can use, say, a Donphan's Heavy Impact, you could use a Yanmega's Linear Attack and Sniper Baby on the bench, you can copy basically anything that's good, which is everything, right? Because, yeah, it's not always going to be the best, but you can copy so much fun stuff. It's really solid. The other one is more of an interesting card, but Mandibuzz I think is actually pretty solid because we still have Kingdra Prime, so we can still do the whole sniping bit to place counters where we need to. Blindside is something that was on Honchkrow literally like 3 sets ago for 2 Dark Energy to do the same amount with the same HP and everything too. Power creep, I tell you. Blindside for 1 Dark Energy, 50 damage to one of the opponent's Pokemon that has any damage counters on them. So yeah, we get to place a counter with Kingdra on all of these like 60 HP dudes that evolve. We place the counter down and then we snipe it and we just take it out. We don't even bother with their main attacker if we can get away with it. Absolutely insane. However, if we have to go after their main attacker, well, if their main attacker is a stage 2, that's going to hurt them quite a lot. Punishment for a dark and double colorless does only 40 damage, but it does 100 if the opponent is a stage 2. Yeah, eat your heart out, Crocodile. This does it much better. Yeah, this card's pretty cool. Also, the Blindside can attack the opponent's active, so you don't even have to necessarily snipe bench. And, you know, Special Darkness Energy can boost it in the active, so it's got a lot of potential. 90 HP is a bit frail, but yeah, it's cool. Metal types do get a card here in Klinklang. This unfortunately isn't very good right now. It's basically Meganium, or Venusaur for the base setters. It's basically that, but for Metal Energy. As often as you like during your turn, you may shift Metal Energy around your board. This could be kind of neat to do the same sort of thing as what Reuniclus does with Blissey Prime, but unfortunately being Fire Weak is really, really bad right now. So yeah, this is one of the few times where Fire is the dominant type, so a bit sucky on that, and its attack is also terrible, so don't play it for that. I want to quickly note this Lillipup just because Shocklock and Expanded used it. This was Stoutland later on that prevents supporter cards from being played, and then you Memory Berry pickup here to pick up an item. I think that was probably VS Seeker, so you could use AZ to pick up your Raichu off the bench that paralyzed the opponent when you evolved into it. Excuse me, throat is deciding it wants to die. But yeah, no, this Lillipup's attack was instrumental in that. Right now we don't need it, right, because we have Junk Arm, so like, who cares? And also the Stoutland in this set is terrible, so whatever. There's a couple of good things it can do actually with Odeslove, but I don't think you can really tank with this ever, so yeah, it's just bad. I don't know. Control deck stuff isn't really here yet. Colorless does get a couple of good cards though, in Cinccino, which is your Wigglytuff, actually, in terms of what it can do. Double colorless energy, 20 damage for every Pokemon on your bench. Technically, Wigglytuff did 10 for itself as well, but it did it for free energy. This is 100 for 2, basically, which is pretty solid. You can use this with Kingdra, maybe, buff the damage up as well, and also deal with Donphan that can deal with you otherwise. So yeah, pretty solid. And then the last card for Pokemon is Boofa. Bouffalant gets 2 good cards, I think, ever, and they're both in Gen 5. First one here, I mentioned this attack would come back. Revenge, 2 colorless energy, so DC compatible. If any of your Pokemon were KO'd by damage during your opponent's last turn, from from an attack, you do 90 for 2, or 90 for a DC. Very, very solid, literal revenge kill, right? But super, super good. We're going to see this kind of design space explored a lot overall, and this is the first good one. It doesn't hit for weakness unless you're hitting Rayquaza Deoxys Legend, but it doesn't really necessarily have to. 90 is a very solid amount to go for, and you can plus powers and do stuff like that to get it to where it needs to be. So yeah, really good card. As far as the trainers, because there aren't that many of them, 13 in total, a lot of them are reprints. Energy Retrieval gets a print again, finally. Now it does not require you to discard a card in order to get your basic energy back, so that's really good. Energy Surge gets a reprint. All of this sort of stuff is important to note, because when we rotate to Heart Gold, beyond Heart Gold, Soul Silver on, like to Black and White on, we will need to have prints of these cards. So yeah, Energy Surge, Energy Switch, full heal I guess. Plus Power has the errata. If you didn't see the rule change video, this now has a global 10 damage buff to all of your Pokemon, which then gets discarded immediately, so you can Junk Arm it back in the same turn. So yeah, it's no longer attached to a single Pokemon, so that's kind of cool. Pokeball gets a reprint, Pokedex gets a reprint. Look at the top 5 of your deck and rearrange them. I technically used this in Quadzar actually, which was pretty fun. Used it with Ether later on to get energy acceleration. Right now, Research Record does this better, so we wouldn't play it just now, but you know, there's technically synergy with it later if you want to do some dumb stuff. Pokemon Communication gets a reprint, so this will be legal for almost all of Gen 5, which is pretty good. Potion now heals 30 instead of 20, so that's cool. Steelix players rejoice until you get melted by an Ember, but you know, it's there. Professor Juniper is the other one that people tout as ruining the game, and I don't know, I can't necessarily agree, but I also see their point. Discard Draw 7 as a supporter card has been kind of made evergreen now. There was one generation, Generation 7, where this effect was not ever available, but it's been in every other generation beyond that, and I can kind of see why people don't like it. It's ridiculously aggressive draw, and it does tend to more heavily favor the basic heavy decks. But every deck is going to play this eventually. It doesn't necessarily get universally adopted immediately because we have other abilities, right? Professor Oak's New Theory, Sage's Training, Twins is really big at the moment as well, as much as I'm like iffy on the card. Yeah, lots of other things that Stage 2 decks can use that don't involve discarding the whole hand, but this is going to be huge later on. Keep this in mind. In fact, I mean, it's going to be huge now as well. It does get played, obviously. Discard Draw 7 is insane, but it gets much, much better in future formats when we don't have to rely quite so heavily on Stage 2s in every single deck. So yeah. Revive gets an upgrade here as well. It now no longer puts damage counters on the Pokemon that it's getting out of the discard. So put a basic from your discard to the bench just for free. This is, Pepper pointed out to me, this is just nerfed Pokemon Rescue, because you can't get evolutions and it goes to the bench, so technically bench powers wouldn't do a thing. I don't think there are any bench powers that we would want to use this for. Maybe Jirachi, I guess, would be the only one. So rip Jirachi players, I suppose, don't play Revive. But yeah, it's still cool. Being able to Junk Arm this is also particularly nice. So this lets you play stuff like Sage's Training maybe a little bit more aggressively, and that's always a fun thing for me. Super Scoop Up gets a reprint, and Switch gets a reprint as well. So these are staying in format for the foreseeable future. We do also get some full art stuff in this set as well, just as a final aside here. You know, Reshiram doesn't translate very well to non-holo stuff here, just because the borders aren't there. You really need the black borders on the actual Pokemon itself here. Zekrom fares much better. Like the white border stuff here is quite nice, I suppose. So there is that. And then there's a secret rare Pikachu that was in like 1 in every 3 boxes or something. This is an extremely rare Pikachu card. You're very lucky to have found it. Except it's Pikachu, so you're very not lucky because, let's be honest. Thunderbolt is actually pretty strong for a Pikachu, let's be real. So, in this format, I could maybe see this being kind of good. Attaching from the discard is maybe a bit awkward though. We don't have Ultra Ball yet, so I don't know how you get an energy in the discard turn 1 unless you play like a really aggressive Sage engine, which I guess you could. If you play a lot of Sage and a lot of Juniper, you probably play one of those on your opening turn. That's likely to get a Lightning in the discard. Yeah, I could maybe see it. I have seen this in Raichu Prime lists, so yeah, maybe. Anyway, that will do for now. This set, unfortunately, I mean, I've still managed to talk about it for half an hour, right? But this is a far cry from when, all of our sets were taking like 50 minutes to talk on in the previous era. Because, my god, there are a lot of good cards in a lot of those sets. This one, just not so much. Like, I can just briefly hover over some of the stuff I've glossed over and just be like, yeah, no, these clearly don't do anything. So, it's a shame. We are not out of the worst of it yet, though. Gen 5 does not start off very good, I'm afraid. But we will get to that next time. Thank you very much for watching. Hope you found this interesting. And until we do the battles for this, take care, everyone.